Hello and welcome to Fanko Decodes. There's a good chance you've been sold a lie about success. It's a lie whispered in Silicon Valley boardrooms, shouted in Wall Street trading pits, and taught in business schools across the world. This lie is the gospel of brutal efficiency, of crushing the competition, of treating your career like a never-ending war of attrition. And the poster child for this gospel is a 2,500-year-old book, Sun Tzu's The Art of War. But what if this mainstream interpretation, the one that's fueling your burnout, stressing you out, and turning your office into a battlefield, is completely, fundamentally wrong? What if the book everyone quotes to justify aggression is actually a secret manual for a quieter, smarter, and far more powerful way to win? A philosophy not about fighting harder, but about a radical shift in perspective that leads to the ultimate prize: the art of winning, without ever having to fight. Today, here on Fanko Decodes, we're not just going to talk about this book. We are going to decode it. Our goal isn't to give you a few quick office hacks. It's to perform a system reboot on the entire operating system that runs your career, your conflicts, and maybe even your life. To do that, we have to go deeper than the surface-level quotes. We need to become part historical detective, part linguistic archaeologist. First, we will excavate the original Chinese text, peeling back centuries of mistranslation to see what the words actually meant. Then, we will step into the brutal historical world it was born from, a world of iron, blood, and constant existential threat. And only then will we translate its timeless principles into a practical modern toolkit you can use starting tomorrow. This isn't just another history lesson. This is an intervention, a masterclass in a forgotten philosophy of power. So are you ready to unlearn everything you thought you knew about winning? Our deep dive begins with the very first earth-shattering line of The Art of War. Part 1. The Foundation. The heavy reverence of war as a matter of vital importance. Our journey's starting point is the first sentence of the first chapter of The Art of War. On the screen, you can see the original Chinese characters. This sentence is, arguably, the bedrock of the entire philosophy. The original text is, 兵者，国之大事，斯生之地，存亡之道，不可不察也. Translated, these characters convey a message of incredible weight and seriousness. War is a matter of vital importance to the state, the ground of life and death, the path of survival or ruin. It must be thoroughly examined. Now, let's act like linguists and put these ancient characters under a microscope to examine the immense power they contain. First, the character for warfare, Bing. In Sun Tzu's time, its meaning was far grander than just soldier. It first meant weaponry, the physical tools of killing. It then evolved to mean the army armed with those weapons. And finally, it sublimated into an abstract concept, military force, or the instrument of war, the ultimate and most dangerous component of the state machine. So when Sun Tzu begins with this character, he is talking about the most extreme and powerful force a nation can possibly wield. Next, the phrase guo ji da shi, the great affair of the state. In ancient China, great affairs specifically referred to two things: rites and sacrifices, which concerned the spiritual faith of the state, and warfare, which concerned its physical survival. By defining warfare as a great affair of the state, Sun Tzu was issuing his first warning to the rulers of his day. To deploy military force is the most solemn and momentous decision you, as a head of state, can make. But what truly fills this sentence with a chilling sense of reverence are the next phrases: Si Sheng Zhi Di, the ground of life and death, and Kunwang Zhi Dao, the path of survival or ruin. The ground of life and death paints a picture of a physical space. Once war is initiated, the ground beneath your feet is no longer farmland or a homestead. It is a killing field that will decide the life or death of thousands. The path of survival or ruin describes a temporal concept. The decision you make in this moment leads directly down one of two divergent paths. One is the survival and continuation of your nation. The other is its collapse and utter destruction. With the calmest, most objective language, Sun Tzu rips away all romantic fantasies about war. He tells us that the essence of war is not glory, not honor, but a cold, hard probability calculation of life and death. Finally, he delivers his conclusion, his first demand of any leader, bu ke bu cha ye. It must be thoroughly examined. The original character here, Chai, is exquisite. It's not simply to look or to think. Its original meaning is to scrutinize, to investigate, to study meticulously. It demands that a decision-maker, before unleashing this ultimate force, must adopt an attitude of extreme prudence and rationality, to repeatedly and comprehensively investigate, simulate, and calculate every single relevant factor. Why does Sun Tzu begin with such a heavy, one might even say pessimistic, opening? For this, we must return to his place in history. The end of the spring and autumn period in China. This was an era of several hundred years where the old order had collapsed. It was a great contest, a time of incessant, brutal warfare. Now, I want to take you to a specific slice of that history, a story that should send a chill down the spine of any modern person. This story serves as a blood-red footnote to Sun Tzu's opening line, the Battle of Changping. This was a decisive battle in 262 BC. Initially, the Zhao army was commanded by the veteran general Lian Po. He knew the enemy was superior and adopted a prudent strategy of fortifying his position and refusing to fight. It was effective, but the king of Zhao, swayed by spies and pressured by hawks at his court, lost patience. He replaced the veteran with Zhao Kuo, a general with zero experience commanding a large-scale war. Zhao Kuo was the classic armchair general. He had memorized military texts but lacked any real reverence for the brutality of war. He recklessly went on the offensive, walking right into an elaborate trap. The Zhao army was encircled, their supply lines were cut, and in the end, after weeks of starvation and despair, over 400,000 soldiers were defeated. But what is truly horrifying is what happened next. The victorious Qin general, in order to completely crush the will of the Zhao state, ordered all 400,000 of these surrendered soldiers to be buried alive. 400,000 lives, extinguished in a single campaign. After Changping, the state of Zhao never recovered. This story is important, not because it happened over 2,000 years ago, but because it happens in miniature in our offices every single day. The story of Zhao Kuo is a mirror. We all have a piece of him inside us. That arrogance of knowing the theory, but lacking respect for the reality. That impatience to prove ourselves, ignoring the risks all around us. Imagine, for Sun Tzu, the cost of a single reckless decision from a leader, a decision based on emotion, not on thorough examination, was not a bad quarterly report. It was the lives of an entire generation of young men. It was the risk of a civilization being wiped off the map. This is the mountainous weight of history behind those words. All right, let's make our first journey through time. Let's bring this ancient maxim into our world today. If Sun Tzu were a CEO or a seasoned career coach, what would he consider the matters of life and death in our own professional lives? He would point to one thing: strategic competition. This isn't just about outperforming a colleague for a bonus. What Sun Tzu means are the pivotal decisions and moments that fundamentally determine the trajectory of your entire career. For example, should you leave a stable job to join a high-risk startup? When your industry is being disrupted, should you abandon your old expertise and learn a completely new skill? When a key project appears, one that could define the next decade of your career, are you truly prepared for it? These are the great affairs of state in your career. Their outcomes are, very often, the ground of life and death. Either you seize the opportunity and leap to a new level, that is, survival, or you make a miscalculation, and your career stagnates or declines, that is, ruin. And precisely because these are high-stakes decisions, the very first and most important piece of advice Sun Tzu gives us is not how to fight bravely. It is that crucial demand: to examine, to observe, scrutinize, and calculate, deeply and rationally, before you act. This brings us to one of the most vital core concepts in the art of war, misused, the temple calculations. In ancient China, before deciding to go to war, the ruler and his generals would gather in the state's ancestral temple. There, with maps and models, they would debate and calculate, running simulations over and over. They were assessing what Sun Tzu called the 5 fundamentals. The logic was simple. He who calculates much wins. He who calculates little loses. How much more so for he who does no calculation at all? The real war, Sun Tzu argues, is won or lost in the temple, long before the first battle is ever fought. So how do we conduct our own temple calculations in our careers? We can use the very same framework. Before you commit to any significant career campaign, you must act like a general in your own temple, which might just be a quiet desk with a pen and paper, and conduct a full strategic assessment. 1. Ask about the way, Tao, mission. In the original text, this refers to the moral alignment between the people and their ruler. Translated to our world, this is your mission and vision. You must have a clear answer to the questions: what is my ultimate purpose in this job? What strategic goal do I hope to achieve through this campaign? This is your North Star. If your direction is wrong, the harder you work, the further you stray. 2. Ask about heaven, Tian, timing. The text refers to uncontrollable macro factors. In the workplace, this is the macro environment. Is your industry a rising tide or a fading one? Where are the market trends heading? Is now the right moment for a bold move, or is it a time for laying low? Your judgment of heaven determines whether your efforts will be amplified by the wind at your back or exhausted by swimming against the current. 3. Ask about earth, Di, the battlefield. The text refers to the physical terrain. For us, this is your specific competitive environment. Is it a red ocean, fiercely contested? Or is it a blue ocean, an untapped market? The Chengshi Haozhou wine example mentioned by Feng Tang is a brilliant case of choosing the battlefield. Instead of fighting in the crowded premium wine market, his team found a blue ocean, high-quality, affordable table wine. So you must ask yourself, within my company or my industry, where is the neglected, high-value blue ocean project? 4. Ask about the commander, Jiang, leadership. The text lists the 5 virtues of a general. In our context, this is an assessment of yourself and your direct leader. How are my core abilities, my credibility, my empathy, my decisiveness, and my self-discipline? What is my boss's leadership style? How much support can I realistically expect from them? The commander is the central variable in any campaign. 5. Ask about the method, Fa, discipline. The text refers to the Army's organization and logistics. For us, this is the company's processes and the resources you can mobilize. What are the standard operating procedures? How smooth is cross-departmental collaboration? How much budget and manpower can I secure? Understanding the method determines whether your grand strategy is a viable plan or just a fantasy. You see, through these temple calculations, your understanding of a campaign transforms from a vague emotional level to a structured, rational one. The biggest mistake in any career is to, as Feng Tang says, just grab a club and rush out to fight, acting on pure impulse. Sun Tzu's wisdom is the exact opposite. He demands that before we act, we must first complete this profound self-interrogation and environmental assessment. Because the success or failure of your career is rarely determined by how bravely you fight, but by the quality of your judgment and your choices in the moments that matter. This is the first and most important lesson from the ancient maxim of war as a matter of vital importance. Treat your strategic decisions with reverence. Think like a general, not like a soldier. Part 2. The core method. The wisdom and grace of all warfare is based on deception. So if we've completed our temple calculations and made the deliberate decision to go to war, how should we act? Here, we arrive at the most controversial, most fascinating, and most easily misunderstood core concept in all of the art of war. The original text reads, Bing Jie, Gui Dao Ye, 4 short words that seem to open a world of schemes and variables. The character Gui is often simply translated into English as deception, which immediately makes people think of conspiracy, treachery, and unethical tactics. Many dismiss it as a dishonorable path, but this understanding is incredibly superficial and flat. To understand the true meaning of Gui Dao, we need to look at Sun Tzu's own explanation that follows. He says, "Therefore, when able, appear unable. When active, appear inactive. Attack him where he is unprepared. Appear where you are not expected." This description reveals the true kernel of Gui Dao. It is not simple lying. It is a profound wisdom based on a deep insight into human nature. It is the art of creating illusions, of managing your opponent's perceptions and expectations, to create an asymmetrical advantage, thereby achieving your strategic objectives with the minimum possible cost. Its core is to outthink, not to outfight. Again, we need to return to the context of history to understand. In Chinese history, nearly all famous victories of the few against the many are perfect demonstrations of Gui Dao. Another classic example is the story of the empty fort strategy. All right, now that we understand Gui Dao in ancient warfare, we face the critical question: how do we apply this wisdom ethically and with grace in the modern workplace? It is absolutely not about backstabbing or spreading rumors. That will only win you a single battle while causing you to lose the entire war of your career. The true essence of Gui Dao in the workplace is to understand it as a form of advanced emotional intelligence and strategic communication. Its purpose is to manage the perceptions of key people and thereby prevent and resolve unnecessary conflict. Let's retranslate Sun Tzu's original text to see how it can guide our daily work. 1. When able, appear unable. Neng shi zhi buneng. When you are strong, project humility. This is not about faking incompetence. Its modern application is a form of intelligent humility. Imagine a scenario. In a project meeting, you are the undisputed expert. Option A. You immediately present your flawless solution, pointing out the flaws in everyone else's thinking. The result? Your solution is adopted, but you've also made all of your colleagues feel foolish and created a host of potential adversaries. Option B. You know the answer, but you choose to hold back. You start by asking questions. What are everyone's initial thoughts? John, that's an interesting point. Could you elaborate? After validating everyone's contribution, you then slowly, in a collaborative manner, introduce your idea. Synthesizing what everyone has said. What if we looked at it this way? Do you see the difference? In the workplace, appearing unable is a masterful way of disarming others. By voluntarily ceding the spotlight, you lower their defenses and make them far more receptive to your ideas, while also earning their respect. You have avoided a pointless clash of egos. 2. When active, appear inactive. Yang shi zhi bu yong. When you are about to make your move, project calm. This is particularly effective in key negotiations. Its essence is managing the other person's expectations. For example, in a critical salary negotiation, you've prepared all your data. Option A. You sit down, come out swinging, and lay all your demands on the table. The likely result? The other party immediately goes on the defensive, and the negotiation stalls. Option B. You appear perfectly calm. You don't start with your demands. You start by talking about the company's progress, showing empathy for your boss's pressures. Once the other party is disarmed, you then, seemingly offhandedly but with sharp logic and clear data, present your core request. This strategic pause, this apparent inactivity, makes your final attack, your core argument, land with far greater impact, because it was unexpected. 3. Feng Tang's Workplace Guidao. Feng Tang also shares many practical techniques from his time at top firms, all filled with the wisdom of Guidao. Their core is always about avoiding emotional confrontations to solve problems more effectively. The 12 a.m. rule. This was an ironclad rule for his teams. No controversial or heated topics could be discussed after midnight. Why? Because physiologically, that's when people are exhausted, and their emotional control is at its weakest. Sun Tzu says, "If your opponent is of choleric temper, seek to irritate him." This rule is the inverse application. We must never allow ourselves or our teams to get into an agitated state where we can be easily provoked. It is the wisdom of working with our human limitations, not against them. The Bear Tamer Method. He once had a partner who was brilliant but had a terrible temper. Instead of a head-on collision, Feng Tang used Guidao. You can't change the person, but you can skillfully manage the environment. He would bring the partner his favorite snacks, or wait until after the partner had just come from the gym, when his mood was at its best, to discuss difficult topics. This is the inverse of, if he is taking his ease, give him no rest. The best time to solve the most difficult problems is when your key counterpart is in their best possible state. If you reflect on these methods, none of them are about conspiracy. They are a form of deep empathy, a high-level wisdom, a kind of strategic environmental management for the sake of better collaboration. This is the most graceful and valuable application of the ancient maxim, all warfare is based on Guidao, in the modern workplace. It teaches us that the highest form of power is not to overwhelm, but to guide. Part 3. The ultimate goal. The personal cultivation of winning without fighting. We are now about to arrive at the final destination of our decoding journey, the philosophical pinnacle of Sun Tzu's entire work. If war as a matter of vital importance is the premise of strategy, and Guidao is the method of strategy, then the following sentence is the ultimate goal of strategy. The original text reads, 师故百战百胜，非山之山者也，不战而取刃之兵，山之山者也. Let's savor the meaning of this sentence. Therefore, to win 100 victories in 100 battles is not the acme of skill. This statement, in any culture that glorifies the undefeated champion, is revolutionary. Sun Tzu is saying that winning every single battle is still not the highest form of mastery. Why? Because Sun Tzu, as a profound realist, understood the concept of cost better than anyone. Every victory, no matter how glorious, comes at a staggering price. The lives of soldiers, the depletion of the treasury, the trauma of a people. To frequently rely on combat to achieve victory is, in itself, a massive waste of resources, a form of strategic short-sightedness. So what is the highest form of skill? To subdue the enemy without fighting is the acme of skill. Subdue here isn't just about intimidation. It refers to a situation where, through your overwhelming strength, impeccable reputation, and flawless strategic positioning, a potential enemy, after conducting their own sober temple calculations, comes to the clear conclusion, I have no chance of winning this fight. To engage in battle would be to court my own ruin. And so, they voluntarily abandon the idea of conflict. This is a victory so total, so elegant, that the bloody act of battle itself becomes unnecessary. All right, understanding this, we face our final and most important modern translation. How can we, as ordinary professionals, achieve this supreme state of winning without fighting in our own work? The answer is through the daily personal cultivation of such a powerful reputation and such impeccable professional habits that potential conflicts and obstacles automatically dissolve in your presence. You make yourself so valuable, so reliable, that the thought of opposing you never even occurs to others. This is where Sun Tzu's philosophy meets personal development. Your career should not be a series of battles. It should be a series of non-battles. And to reach this state, you must learn to identify and protect the high-stakes situations, the grounds of life and death, in your professional life. So what defines these career-defining moments? Drawing on Sun Tzu's wisdom, Feng Tang gives us 3 criteria. 1. See through your boss's eyes. Empathy. An issue might seem like a minor oversight to you, a typo in a report. But if you can switch perspectives, your boss might be about to present that report to their boss. That typo could cause them immense embarrassment. In that context, your small issue is a big deal to them. And anything that is a big deal to your boss is, for your career, a high-stakes situation. 2. Anything directly related to money and power. This is just reality. All matters involving budget allocation, project resources, and your own promotions and salary are the contested territories of the workplace. In these areas, even the slightest lack of preparation can lead to a missed opportunity. 3. Anything related to your core competency. Your core competency is the bedrock of your career. Anything that could enhance or diminish your personal brand and professional skills is a matter of your survival or ruin. A project that allows you to gain deep expertise in a cutting-edge technology is a ground of life. Conversely, if someone tries to take credit for your work, that is the ground you must defend. But identifying these situations is not enough. More importantly, you must realize that your unbeatable position is rarely destroyed by one major failure. It is eroded, bit by the invisible career killers you ignore every day. Your bad habits. Feng Tang lists a few that are both common and lethal. Being late to meetings. This signals a lack of respect for others' time. A lack of follow-through. This is the fastest way to destroy your credibility. Never proactively reporting progress. This leaves your manager in a state of anxiety. Always blaming others. This shows a lack of accountability. Being glued to your phone during a meeting. This is deeply disrespectful. You might think these are trivial matters. But as Feng Tang says, your boss doesn't have the time to be your psychologist. They can only judge you by your observable actions. Every time you display a bad habit, you are quietly weakening your strategic position. You are forcing yourself into more unnecessary battles in the future. Battles to explain misunderstandings, to fix mistakes, to regain trust. Conversely, the good habits that allow you to truly win without fighting are those that seem simple but require immense self-discipline. What are they? In the Western business world, we call one always close the loop. Every request that starts with you ends with you, with a clear outcome and communication. This habit builds a powerful reputation for reliability. Another is extreme ownership. When faced with any problem, you first look at what you can do to solve it, rather than focusing on whose fault it is. This habit builds a brand of accountability. When you practice these habits day in and day out, you will find that the conflicts around you begin to decrease. Your reliability and accountability have already cleared most hurdles. You no longer need to prove yourself in battle after battle. Your very presence becomes a silent victory. This is the fundamental difference between an ordinary professional and a strategist. The former is exhausted, fighting one skirmish after another. The latter, through deep personal cultivation, creates an environment where battle is simply unnecessary. Part 4. The General's Peace. Reclaiming control in a world of noise. Our decoding journey is now arriving at its final destination. We began with the solemn weight of war as a matter of vital importance, understanding that reverence is the starting point of all strategy. We dove into the deep wisdom of Guidao, learning how to replace confrontation with guidance. And finally, we reached the philosophical summit of winning without fighting, seeing the power of personal cultivation. Now, let's return to the question I asked at the start. Let's return to that lie that permeates our workplaces and our entire modern society, the gospel of brutal efficiency and crushing the competition. We can now see clearly that the art of war is not a supporter of this lie. It is, in fact, the most powerful antidote to it. It teaches us that true strength is never an outward, aggressive force. It is an inward, self-restrained power. The power to control your emotions, the power to control your timing, and the power to control your own habits. You see, the lie tries to convince us that we must control everything in the external world, control our clients, control our subordinates, control the market. And this is the very root of our burnout and our feeling of being out of control, because the external world is, by its nature, uncontrollable, just as Sun Tzu could not control the weather. And Sun Tzu's entire philosophy points us in the opposite direction. Give up the futile illusion of controlling the world and return to the only viable path, mastering yourself. When you can master your own temple calculations, you will not be swayed by external noise. When you can master your strategic guidance, you will not be provoked by the emotions of others. When you can master your daily habits, you will no longer need to prove your worth in battle after battle. This is the ultimate secret of the art of war. Your career is not a battlefield to be conquered, but a mirror reflecting the quality of your inner cultivation. All the chaos, the loss of control, and the struggle you experience out there is, in essence, a projection of an inner lack of mastery. So your journey begins today, with one small but profound shift. I want you to quietly, for a moment, forget about the grand goals. Forget about the promotion, the raise, the people, and things you cannot control. Just ask yourself one question. A question about your own inner power. In the coming week, what is the smallest thing that is 100% within my control? It may not be as vague as change a bad habit. It might be incredibly specific. Is it a promise to yourself to enter every meeting 1 minute early for the next 7 days? Is it a commitment to close the loop on every single email that requires a reply within 24 hours? Or perhaps every time you feel a surge of anger and the urge to retort, you will first take 3 silent breaths. Choose one, a single atomic action that you have absolute power to execute, no matter what chaos swirls around you. In the comments below, I'd be honored if you would share your point of minimum control for this week, because true peace is found not when the battlefield disappears, but when our power to control ourselves is rebuilt from within. Thank you for joining me on this journey.